The film has this momentum, and Brady has directed something that has become unapologetic. A 70mm print, a 3.5 hour movie with an intermission. It harkens back to the grand age of Hollywood.
Creatively, I was the architect that Laszlo was. And I did think about that, a creative journey that had to be shown for Laszlo.
When you win, I'm sure you will, I've just jinxed it.
I've done it now.
Now you really can never cut your hair, okay? Now you have to wait till the Oscars.
Okay, you don't know me, but this is abnormal.
You have a lot of hair. I think you should take advantage of it and grow it. Yeah.
No, exactly.
First question, are you excited to go to the Academy Awards and soak in all of that all that feeling?
I mean, I've been before, so no. But no.
That's no big deal.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. Yes, I'm excited.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I think everyone's excited to go. Yeah, it's exciting.
Right.
I mean, well, we get to sit way at the back because we're just technical awards, but it is very exciting. And I really don't mean to sound blasé. Of course, it's exciting. You want to be recognized for your work. It's great. I was very nervous the day of the announcement because I really wanted to be nominated. So that shows.
Yeah. No, I think it's, maybe you guys feel the same way. It's like, you don't make art for the rewards, like, to give in, you don't win at art. So something like this it's nice. It's validation level, but it's not it's certainly
it's not the reason ever. And I don't even do it for money. So,
I mean, I think it's everything, like we were saying earlier, Judy and I, that I just think the film, like you said, the film has this momentum, and Brady, has directed something that has become unapologetic about a 70mm print, a 3.5 hour movie with an intermission. It harkens back to the grand age of of Hollywood.
Yeah.
And guess what? People are going to see it. So let's learn from that. And so just all of the awards and everything are fantastic. But I hope that it's going to just make it a little easier for Brady next time, and make it easier for other filmmakers to shoot film, and to get back to this idea that film has to be a certain way, and has to be shot digital and things like this, because it's a fallacy, and I hope this film
for sure.
Right. What's going on?
I mean, I've been on
there,
Lol.
That's a Dutch man walking past.
Yeah, Lol is a really good operator, by the way. I don't know if you know that, but it's not just about the lighting for him.
Right.
No, it's rating of my laptop camera got a bit shaky then, but otherwise
that was deadpan humor, by the way.
Yes. No, that was great. I mean, look, I'm looking forward to more of your handheld work in the future. If this is any indication of what I can come to expect, but I want to talk specifically. Well, let me start at the beginning, because that's always a good place to start. We're going to veer off course, I'm sure, but a film sort of announces itself by the first thing that you see. And I don't know. I don't know if I read that somewhere, and I was like, in a film class learning about Hitchcock or something about the importance of the first image in terms of it, forecasting or telegraphing. And you're going to probably kill me for this, but I remember when I saw the film and the sort of inverted Statue of Liberty, it made me think of Mike Nichols' film called Working Girl, which opens with the Statue of Liberty, but as in a completely different way. It's a monument to womanhood in a way that was very spoke to the film you're about to see. Now, this isn't the same kind of movie by any means, but the inverted statue has obvious meaning. But I was wondering if you could speak to that, just because it's really your introduction, and a very disorienting one at that, to this story you're going to be involved in for the next 3 hours.
Can I say something about Working Girl? Because I think it's about aspiration in that film, not just female aspiration, but it's about aspiration And you know, and in that film, so it does relate a lot to this movie in a sense.
Right. Not that it was in like your lookbook or anything like that,
No,
but
but it could be. I mean, I just rewatched it, and I think it holds up. You know, and
oh,
I've
it's great.
rewatched. You know, and I've watched a lot of movies from the '80s recently, and most of them don't. But that one actually is pretty good. Like it does. Oh, he was a great director, so it's not so
Sure. Yeah.
surprising. But yeah,
But also
Oh,
coming like from Staten Island to the city, it is like
yeah, yeah,
survival. It's like there is something
yeah.
bold
There is
about
something.
using that icon, um,
Yeah.
use it in a different way.
I was talking to, had a discussion with Peter Bradshaw the other night, and it was interesting because he said he saw the movie, and then he was like, "What is it? What does it remind me of?" And then he was like, "Oh my God, Planet of the Apes!" You know, I mean, the very idea of which is a similar thing about taking something that is supposed to be terra firma and hope and solid, and I mean, it's the same in Ghostbusters when it comes to life. It's not supposed to behave any other way than just be this beacon of hope for immigrants, you know, this beacon of hope for people coming to America, you know, and it's supposed to be firm and stand firm. So to subvert it in any way, as these films have done, is kind of an extraordinary image. And I mean, it's amazing because I mean, I am an immigrant coming to America. I've made America my home, you know, and it's like it is such an iconic statue, you know, it stands as a testament to the very best things that America can be, you know. So for that to be subverted early on in the film really does suggest that Laszlo might not be in for an easy ride, you know.
Yeah, no, and it's a sloppy birth in a way. Like that if you look at the navigation through the crowd as sort of this birth canal experience, which maybe I'm reading more into it than it needs to, but that, it comes out and the mother is this upside.
Mhm.
It's all the perspective is all out of whack, right? It's sort of like
Yeah.
you have to orient yourself to this new life. And I think that is an interesting way to introduce the story because you're not going to get the conventional story of triumph and and it was very, very interesting, and I feel it was consistently subversive the whole way, the whole film.
But it's also sort of part of a language that Brady's used across his films, which we've kind of come to refer to as the kind of untethered camera, like that you think it's one thing, like in Childhood of a Leader, you know, you're looking down on Prescott at the end of and this is before he evolves into a fascist, you know, and then the camera tilts upside down and everyone's staring at him is inverted, and then at the end of Childhood, the camera, you know, it's sort of handheld, but then it tumbles through the crowd, and so it you know, I mean, a lot of this stuff comes from, you know, Brady. Most of it comes from just Brady's ideas about how he wants these shots to evolve, and yeah, there's definitely a kind of an unofficial trilogy. You know, there's a shared language across all three films, and I think he's playing with these ideas, you know.
Yeah, and you've worked with him on the two other films that you're referring to, so you
Yeah.
have, I would assume, have developed kind of a shorthand, a little brain sharing in terms of, the executed
Yeah.
ideas, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that's what, you know, along with obviously all of us being, you know, Judy and all of the other heads of department being sort of very much calibrated and aligned on what the aesthetic and what this movie is supposed to be, which I think we've done. I mean, it's hard to say when I'm, but I think we succeeded is what I wanted to say. And it's like, yeah, and having that shorthand. I mean, Brady and I shared the very same taste, you know, like early on. So that stops a lot of discussion, you know, or contradiction, shall we say? It doesn't stop discussion; it stops contradiction. So you could just forge ahead with the thing. I mean, the interesting thing is, for me as a cinematographer, most of the time directors don't have a huge opinion on the lighting. They tend to have a position, an opinion on the lens choice and the camera movement and the composition. But the lighting, very much, I sort of like most of the time just get away with what I want to do. But it you know, it serves the story, and you know, certainly there are specific moments that, because there's a sort of naturalism that Brady and I do share lighting wise, but then there are certain points that sort of ascend it and becomes very unmotivated. And the cross at the end of the movie is a moment like that. But anyway.
No, it's,
but you're like, you agree that it's unmotivated, right? Like that's what.
Oh yeah. Like there's a
like
moment in Childhood of a Leader where Stacey Martin's character gets fired, and suddenly this like beam of light comes, like you don't see it, but the light source, of course, but it just sort of flares the lens, and it's very unmotivated. And so he sometimes like just goes into these other. And then the other day, Brady was talking about how, you know, he wants the films to be a sort of dream of a dream of a dream, you know, like. And so often it is like that. They're impressions of a feeling of something rather than this literal representation every time. You know, I mean, and then brings us back to the Statue of Liberty. Of course, that's not what you see, or even what Laszlo saw, but it's an impression of what it might represent to him and the audience as well.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that makes sense, and it's some of it. And we're not talking to the editor today, but some of the editing choices reinforce that idea that this isn't exactly how the world unfolds and exactly how the experience would, you know, is told in a, you know, in a linear fashion. You know, they're definitely, I don't want to call them unmotivated. They're just motivated by something other than, you know, let's say conventional lighting sources or logic of storytelling. It just, that doesn't make it less. It just makes it different.
I mean, I think the editing is really worth talking about, in the sense that I think that party scene when they secure the commission for the library and Laszlo gets them $2,000 rather than $1,000, or you know, for the thing. There's a real temporal sort of like displacement in that scene, and you know, it's kind of all over the place a lot of the time, but it's perfect. You know, like it jumps forward and backwards, and you know, it doesn't go too crazy, but there are certain points where it liberates itself from traditional kind of a traditional timeline, you know.
I support those decisions almost all the time. I remember hearing a story. It was about the film Basquiat, and Julian Schnabel had not directed a film because he was a painter, and his editor Michael Berenbaum, they were working together, and he's like, well, why do I have to fade to black? Can't I fade to brown or blue or like his coming at it, not understanding the rules, allowed him, you know, maybe more a broader palette of expression in a way, right?
Thank you.
Because that's all they are. They're just rules.
Yeah, it's interesting. We, you know, especially I think because we all, you know, kind of got into it and have a certain reverence for filmmaking and for how it's done. I mean, I remember like working with non-actors early on, and the director, Dwayne Hopkins, was like, well, I don't want to put a slate in front of their face, but it's like we all do it, and it's such an archaic thing. And if you do that to a non-actor, then they're like, they feel like they're being acted. So if we had to try and get rid of all those trappings and lights and stuff, because it's suddenly you end up with a non-actor trying to act, and it's the most, if you get that, that's the worst case scenario, you know.
I want to veer into production design for a minute here, because and also I want how you two communicate as different but really vital departments. You know, I'll preface by saying I grew up in Montgomery County, one county away from Bucks County. So of course I'm just like heard before I see it that this was not shot in Bucks County, and I'm like, you know what? That looks like sort of, you know, out to the rural Pennsylvania countryside. Good job.
Yeah. Thanks.
But that's location department anyway. So
no, it's not. Wait, were you joking? Who do you?
That was my dry sense of humor.
Oh, that was good. That was good. I'm very gullible, by the way, so it always works on me.
That's okay. I always tell my kids, you know, that the word gullible is not in the dictionary. They took it out, and they go, "What?" Me, really? And that
Yeah,
only
I
works
grew up
for
with
one.
a father like that too.
Yeah, I'm a full pull my finger kind
Then
of
he had to
guy.
pay for my therapy, so think about that for a minute.
Oh, I know I'm paying. That's fine.
Yeah.
But there was something very interesting about seeing his Laszlo's, um, just his sense of things, um, against his brother-in-law or his cousin that he's
Cousin.
Cousin, yeah.
like the aesthetic
Hello.
differences of their shop versus the Bauhaus he installs in the window. These are like
Yeah.
really sort of intentional things, but the real beauty of this, because it's not always a beautiful film in terms of what it's saying, how it looks, how it feels, and then you understand. I feel like you really understand him when you see that library open,
Yeah.
all of those doors opening at this, like the symmetry, the beauty, like sort of you're almost you get access to his
Yeah.
heart and his soul that you hadn't before. And I
Yeah.
just wondered of like, are you working in stages to sort of reveal that as a character in the
Yeah.
story? How
That
do
was
you?
that. I mean, I think that was deliberate, I mean, for me, because I was working through his character. I was creating his character through his design in a sense. I mean, obviously I'm not the only one creating his character. Adrien, first of all, and Brady and Mona wrote it, so that all of us were him, were Laszlo, but creatively, I was the architect that Laszlo was. So and I did think about that as a journey, that a creative journey that had to be shown for Laszlo.
But was it written like, was it in the screenplay that like the actual design, or is this something that you said we need to we need for him to create something bold, and you went and looked at different style elements and found something and said this needs to be what he's
No,
area.
it what was scripted was, yes, that he designs a modern, beautiful library. Basically, it wasn't specified what it looked like beyond the one thing that was, and it was a very small specification. It wasn't even necessarily how it looked. It was written that when they're installing the shelving, the workers have all the shelves down on the floor and they pull them up and it's like the opening of a flower. So it was more for the execution of it than for what it looked like at the end. And that was basically all I had to go on. But I had a lot to go on because I was with Brady all the time, so I could ask him whatever I wanted.
Right.
It wasn't, and it's clear that it's supposed to be a big moment in the movie, but it's not said this is the stunning, like this is when we realize that Laszlo is a great artist. No, it doesn't say that. So it's,
Yeah, but I'm saying the movie says that, even if the screenplay
oh yeah, the movie
isn't
says it
permitted
for
to,
sure,
but
but
so
the script didn't say it. So I did think about, and the script didn't say it, that yes, he's going through a journey. Like this guy just got back from a concentration camp, and then he's a homeless refugee, and then he's stuck in a boat, which you don't see the set that was there, but it was like a homeless shelter, but worse. So they're all crammed together in the hold of a ship. And then they get out and it's freedom, it's America, welcome. Oh, guess what? It's not going to be so great, but like right now he doesn't know it. So then he's like with his cousin sleeping in a storage closet, and cousin asks him to design some furniture. So the furniture that he designs for the window, the way I did design that furniture, and I approached it as though he doesn't have a lot of creative juice at that moment because he has been through hell, basically, physically and emotionally. And he's sort of just and I think it shows how strong Laszlo is as a person, that he's able to do anything at all at that point. So he is going back to his roots of his Bauhaus training, and that's why the furniture looks so Bauhaus inspired. And beyond that, he incorporates ideas that he gets from the furniture around him, which I don't think you would see on the first viewing of that movie, and maybe never unless you read me or heard me explaining it. But I got all the inspiration beyond the tubular steel framing, which is very clearly Bauhaus. I made all the inspiration come from pieces around him in the furniture store, or things I brought, literally brought like lawn chairs from New York as my luggage to place in the set so he could be inspired by the webbing on them. So, and so I was going really method on the furniture design. And because I thought he doesn't have any money, he's being asked to design some amazing furniture, and he's got to get his ideas from somewhere. And I felt he was depleted creatively then. So he's searching for something. And I think that when it came to the library, then that's the moment where we have to see that he's a genius. You know, it's a big moment in the movie. And I'm not saying Brady didn't think that. I'm just saying, like, you know, I understood that that's where we have to see that he's a genius. And I didn't really, you know, I see that now. At the time, I think I was just, and I know that I was aware of it, but I also just, I guess the way I approach work is I don't get frightened of it. I'm just like step by step, you know, so, okay, this is important. We have to show it. The library came to me very spontaneously as an idea of how it was going to look. When we scouted the location, I just knew, I just had this concept of it, and that had probably come from a year and a half of it percolating in my head because the movie pushed a lot. And and we didn't have a location. So when I saw the location, I suddenly had this idea of it's what you see in the movie. I mean, almost everything that you see in the movie, not the little details of how it was executed, but the cabinets and the doors and the opening, that was all came to me, and the way it's forced perspective in the room. I just, I thought of it because I was desperate when we were scouting this glass room. Like, how am I going to make this work? You know, like bookshelves on glass walls. Like, how am I going to make this work? And I just got this idea. So it really, I think it was the result of it all circling in my head for a year and a half. But it just came to me, and then executing it was difficult because wood is a problematic source in Hungary because of the fact that they get all their wood from Ukraine and the invasion had already happened. So that's just a boring story about the day-to-day, you know, work of being a production designer and having to find materials. And then and the Institute, you know, is the crowning achievement that you see pieces of, and you see, you know, a model, and you see it far away, but it's almost like, you know, Moby Dick, you know, it's in a sense, and then you hear about it. So it's always almost an illusion. But it is his, you know, it's what he spends his life on, really. It's like paying tribute and moving beyond history.
Well, our experience of his life is that, right? We come to know that he's done more in the epilogue, but
yeah,
you know,
he became a great architect, a architect.
But so bringing it back to the film till the library is revealed, you know, it's all, he's in awkward spaces, he's confined, he's, you know, so the production design, and also I'm assuming like the lighting and the way it's shot is there to sort of push on him, right? Like we never really see him open up until this project is revealed, and it's like, you know, and even though he's a small person in a large room, the largeness of him is sort of expressed in his work, in his space, in his genius. For the first time, so I feel like there's such a shift in the whole way the film is seen. Then I could be misremembering it some.
No, and also because it's a moment of repose for him, for Laszlo, for Adrien, and he really looks like that moment as an artist when you feel happy with your work. You see that in him at that moment, and it's I think one of the only times in the whole movie when Laszlo seems at peace in a sense and happy with himself and with life. And that's true, that you can feel that way, like, you know, when you've created something, it's a great feeling. So I think that's one of the only moments in the movie where he's not because he's high or he's drunk or he's having sex, that he's just that's what makes him happy in that moment. And I think that's where he regains his sense of self, you know. and then
Sure.
and then it, you know, goes forward, and you know, he has to have a big, yeah.
I mean, I think it's interesting because the whole film is about, I mean, the idea of light, I think, in the design, you know, in the architecture is absolutely essential. But the whole film is about light and dark. Like in his work, it is, you know, I mean, when in his hedonistic moments in the jazz club, he's not happy, you know,
No.
even though on the, you know, everyone in the club probably feels that they are or whatever. But even in, you know, so he's in the brothel, he's in the jazz club, he's at the beginning of the ship, all of these kind of tormented dark spaces, and then the bright sort of ascendancy, or this kind of like, you know, the whole film is kind of vacillating between these two worlds in many ways. And the ship sequence almost encapsulates everything. It starts, you know, people have said, oh, are we in Dachau, or, you know,
Yeah.
and then by the end of it, he's so joyful and hopeful, and it's all just bright and white, and you know, so I think the whole movie ping pongs between these things in many ways, you know.
Right. Well, the way that the first shot is its own little version of the film, right?
Yes,
Is like,
exactly.
what does your first shot say?
And a version of the institute that Judy designed. You know, it's like because half of the institute is subterranean and seeking, trying to devoid of light, and trying to, you know, and then the, you know, the towers and the kind of where the light is coming from is, you know, and these is all about the, you know, it's like you said, it's summed up at the end of the movie where you realize, oh, and then the point where Ejibet says, which bit are we paying for? And he says, the height. And you're like, okay. And then you didn't really, as an audience, know about that. But then you go, oh, of course, he's so angry about the height being chopped down, and he's, you know, he has to retain it because it's so significant to him, you know?
Right. Well, it's like the small arc that follows the opening that, you know, that ends with the library is then now repeated. He goes into a larger, much more complex world with his wife coming over, the sort of this large project kind of tumbling into conflict, and then the light is the epilogue in a way. Right. It's, you know, it's not similar. Like, I don't think it looks the same way, although I guess you could, that was happening in the 80s, right? That the,
1980, yeah.
Right. So there's light around the idea of that happening in that time. That's the equivalent to the way that the light reveals the library, or the light is exposed. But it just seems like there's sort of like unfolding rhythmic cycles of darkness to light, and then this final, you know, darkness and the light is understanding, right? To
Yes.
finally understand him, you know, when in his retrospective, is that light, because we now see it.
Yes. Yeah.
Were you expecting people to understand the meaning of the structure as it was being built? Like, I'm sure there's some discussion about that. You know, you're making this film, this, you know, the community center, as, you know, I don't want to call it like, you know, concentration camp, you know, sort of sense memory. That's right. The tragedy in there. Is that something that is meant to really be driven home only in the epilogue, or is it
I
something?
think so. I mean, I definitely designed it so that it gets, all of that would come across if you could enter that building. Because, and I had a lot of, it was interesting, and I would even say fun to do that, because you could build the building, and because it was designed as a building. I mean, someone would have to do all the boring infrastructure part, but and it did, and it was more and more interesting to do it the farther along I went. But you did enter by descending very steeply into the ground, and also the staircase got narrower as you descended, so that by the end you really were imprisoned in this building, in a corridor with very low ceilings, and then you exited through a very into the light on a broad staircase. And we built a model of it that was used as an in-camera, miniature as a VFX model. So, and you see it in the film. Lowell shot it. It was inspired by a photo we had of the first Star Wars, where we saw three guys shooting in the desert, like a model of one of the space vehicles. So, and I later met the guy that made that model just by chance at a Q&A. So it was really funny. But anyway, so we did build this big, like not 10-foot long model of the interior and the exterior of the institute. So you could actually have gone through it with like one of those miniature cameras and seen the whole institute, which was great. Unfortunately, that model ended up in a dumpster, so you can't.
What?
Yeah, well, this is how movies are so wasteful, and
I guess. I mean, they still have like the Friends set lives somewhere. I guess, like, right? I mean,
it does.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe not.
Maybe it does. I don't know. But the thing is, we didn't have any money at that time. When we wrapped this movie, there was no money to store that or to send it back to the United States. So I think if it was now, like, someone A24 would have sent the model over here and we could put it on display, but it wasn't the same way when we wrapped it. So so anyway, I don't think an audience could realize all of this. I don't think by watching the movie you could, but it's there. So in some sense, maybe subconsciously, some of that comes across. We did build a lot of those entrances going into the ground. You see that in the construction site. You see them coming out of it when they're coming out of a quarry with a lot of blueprints and things at the construction site. So I think some of that, the fact that it's so far underground, they talk about it. And then at the end, when they're searching for Harrison, you see them going through that, the waterworks of the building, with the flashlight, and which was a location. So I think that sense that a lot of this building is underground and that relationship to darkness does come through. The very specific way in which it was designed, maybe not.
Well, that's a very deliberate way to present it, so that we can't truly unpack him even after we know this meaning of his work, right? But that's what's so interesting about it. And I'm like, this guy didn't exist. Like, as I'm watching it, going, this isn't based on a true. It's a pure historical fiction, but based on some influence, right? You guys were looking to a specific architect, more or less.
I mean, maybe I think that for Brady was thinking of some architects, and I was, and we talked a lot, the most about Marcel Breuer, only because he was Bauhaus trained. He did emigrate to America before the war. Nobody survived the war and then had a career as an architect. It's just whether that was just a coincidence or because you can't go through a concentration camp and then be intact as a creative person. I mean, I know that obviously people did survive and did go on and have successful careers, but no one in the architecture field did, or a design field. So Laszlo did not exist. He was not a real person. But the person I looked at the most was Marcel Breuer, because I think that was the aesthetic that was closest in a sense, but not like his domestic architecture. And he didn't do that much brutalist architecture. So I was most influenced by the way that he and his wife lived and their interiors. And because when I was doing Laszlo's, the guest house where he stayed near Harrison's house, and then his apartment in New York, and you don't see a lot of those because they were shot fairly tightly, but I looked at Marcel Breuer's the interiors where he lived, and I was like, I mean, Laszlo's not going to go out and buy furniture. He's going to design it for himself and make it for himself, and he's not going to waste money on that. So I designed and made everything. We made everything out of plywood because it's simple material. I figured he'd find it on a construction site, and then cinder block tables, which Marcel Breuer had. Like, even when he was rich and I assume relatively rich and successful, all his end tables, like in the living room, were cinder blocks. And I thought, that's so brilliant. And it was very avant-garde, probably for like the 50s, and they looked great. Like, I want to do it actually. So so I was like specifically, and yes, very influenced by Marcel Breuer for those touches. And it turned out plywood was so expensive in Hungary. Like I had to ask for overages for like a sheet of plywood. And like, so those are the things when you're working in another country that catch you by surprise. You just don't know. I picked a cheap material, I thought, and then it turned out to be very expensive. So I'd say he was of the artists, of the architects of Laszlo's generation, he was for me the most influential.
And I think I read Kara may have sent us an email that he designed your Westchester synagogue. As
It was a synagogue in
it, like,
Westchester. I have never been inside of it.
oh,
I knew
okay.
about, yeah, I knew about it when I was a child because as I said, I was interested in architecture, and it was, and my mom told me it was in the shape of a Star of David, but you couldn't tell. It just looked like a white building with a lot of angles. And I loved the idea, though, that no one knew this, but if you looked at it from above, it was in the shape of a Star of David. By the way, I also didn't know it was designed by Marcel Breuer until like a couple of months ago. But
Right.
I was thinking about it when I was designing the Institute because I wanted Laszlo to do something subversive with the Institute, like incorporate a Star of David into it and no one would know. But honestly, I just couldn't figure out how to do it. So I tried a lot of things. So I went in the other direction and I put the cross everywhere. But
Right.
like,
That's what I thought the reveal was going to be, that the light somehow,
made a Star of
in
David.
some sort of staff of raw Indiana Jones fashion would create a Star of David or something.
Oh my God, that would have been really hokey, wouldn't it? I wasn't going to do that. I was going to do some kind of, I was going to somehow make it, yeah, it wouldn't, the audience would never have known probably. So
Also, it's interesting you bring up that scene because I think, I mean, I may be historically incorrect about this, but, I'm sure I mean, my assumption is that that's soon after the end of the war. We didn't fully realize the horrors of what had happened. So in the sense when they're having the conversation over dinner, it's wholly inappropriate because she says to Laszlo, "Oh, what was it like? What did you experience?" And if you'd sort of understood.
I mean, we must have known Margaret. Wait, what's her name? Lee Miller took photographs of it.
Yeah,
Like
but people didn't want to know.
they
I think
didn't
there was
want to
so
know.
much ignorance
Yeah,
about what was
I totally
happening.
believe that.
The full
I think
reports
we
weren't
knew
even
what was going
unearthed.
on during
I
it.
mean, if Laszlo had actually revealed over dinner, I mean,
That would have been great.
yeah.
Next movie.
I don't think anyone would be expecting that, to
No,
come from his
you're
mouth.
right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that'd be that can be Jesse Eisenberg's next movie.
Right.
His next comedy.
But this was, I mean, I don't think that it matters necessarily that the filmmakers or the cast or crew, there's a large sort of Jewish identity of the film. But I'm not sure how many of the actual filmmakers have a Jewish identity, right? I mean, I don't think Brady
I
did.
think Brady just found out he's part Jewish, but he didn't know.
He didn't know, right?
Yeah.
So,
I was like, Brady, you gotta be because you seem like pretty interested in.
go check again.
Yeah,
There's
he never
something.
checked before, so it was
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, he just found out. But
Yeah. Well, I don't want
but
to.
not too many. There weren't so many. Adrien.
No, and I don't, like I said, I don't think it's a requirement to tell that story and tell it.
No, I think it's actually really great for a non-Jew to tell that story.
If it's told from the right place,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
The thing that I guess this is a completely other topic, but maybe I know we have to wrap it up fairly soon, but this was not a big budget film, right? This was a
No.
little, like, what's it, 12? Am I right?
No, it was 10, and I honestly thought it was less than 10 when we were making the movie.
So like, first of all, wow, like both of you to barely sort of like, you know, get the visual experience that you created out of something that, and that's not pocket change, but it must have been a fairly large challenge to do that. And then you're shooting it in VistaVision to boot. I guess, as a cinematographer, what's it like did you feel that there were restrictions on you? The challenge was this needs to feel like a film that cost you know, 10 times as much here, or it's just, this is what I've got, this is the job, and this is it.
No, to be honest, it didn't. I mean, you know, we look back at these things and then it shifts in colors, you know, and the experience. But I honestly feel that it was a continuum for me, the way that I was working with Brady of the other films. You know, I said it before with Judy, but sometimes you get to a point where it's just silly. It's just that what is expected you to achieve on the schedule and the budget is just nonsensical. This wasn't like that, and everything is challenging. It was very ambitious, and we worked incredibly hard to pull this off. I mean, I'm not, you know, that much is true, but essentially, no. It's like, you know, the VistaVision element. VistaVision is not harder to shoot for, other than the camera is a little more cumbersome, and you have half of the film stock, but you're not, it's still 35 mil neg, and you don't need more lights to expose it or anything like this. So there's not a constraint in that regard by shooting VistaVision. And then the 70 mil aspect kind of came after the event. So then that was just another, you know, it wasn't a financial burden on the production budget, as it were, you know. But yeah, I mean, no, it felt like we were working in the way we've always worked. And I think in answer to like, how do you achieve this in 33 days for the budget? I mean, I would say you don't overcover scenes, you know. I mean, it's like the branches of a tree. If you start adding shots, then you add takes for every single shot, and suddenly exponentially the whole thing, your entire day just becomes, you know, you run out of time. Whereas if you say, okay, it's 1 or 2 shots, sure, they're ambitious, sure, they last for 5 minutes and you have to get everything, but once you've got everything on its feet, then you know, then it's easier to pull off, you know.
Yeah, I mean, nothing about this seemed easy watching it.
No, easier to pull off.
Right. So, but you know, just it's you know, I think what you did a very good job of is that you've created something that feels, you know, it's large, it's meaningful, and it resonates with your experiences and all of these things you're bringing to it, whether it's perceived directly, like, oh, the furniture he built is based on the things that he was observing to that point, or, you know, or it's just, you know, you feel a sense of the evolution of the character in the design and then
oh yeah, no, I mean, I don't think I do any of it so that people are specifically thinking that, just so that it feels organic to the viewer, you know, in some way. So they're not, I don't want them to feel distracted by anything. It should just feel like it flows in some way. You know,
but
what I
that's
mean?
part of the, and I've heard people talk about this before, the feeling of like, you know, you're in capable hands.
Yeah.
There is this thing where like the care, that level of care to every single detail from, you know, and I don't want to, you're sitting in the back of the Academy Awards, you're not technicians, you're artists. I don't care what you say.
Okay. Yeah.
Whether it's perceived or not, because you are, you know, so tuned into every decision and its relationship to the other decisions, the coverage as a tree, the evolution of style, and this sort of, you know, turning it into these reveals. And that's all part of that feeling where an audience can take it in, literally, figuratively, calling it out. I mean, look, I'm sure it's probably a different experience for someone who has a background to say, I see this. It's not, you're not making it for them, but for someone who's just a viewer to basically have an experience that's a full and rich one because of everything you've done. You know, and if it's just a feeling, I think
That's a really lovely thing for you to say, and it feels good to hear it.
Yeah, well, it certainly feels that way. I mean, I didn't get to see it big, and I really wish I could have.
Oh, yeah.
So I may try to. It's probably still out, and with
It is.
probably,
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
you
it's still there.
But I have a really good sound system and a big TV, so it does. And I have rules in my house, like don't turn your, like, no phones, no snacks, no this, like
No getting up to go to the bathroom.
well, in a 3.5-hour movie,
Oh,
I'm not sure what choice you have.
Here's
I mean,
the intermission.
that's
Although,
what it's the intermission's
I missed
for.
the beginning of the second half both times, so it's.
Well, I got to pause during the intermission, and it wasn't. So the intermission in the film was long, right? 20
No,
minutes, 15 minutes?
15 minutes. How long?
15, yeah.
15. So, watching it at home, it's as long as you want it to be. You can,
Oh, yeah?
like,
Okay.
So
That's
I just
not the
got,
real.
I took a
Oh.
breath. I did some stretches, but
Well,
it
you had an
really,
intermission as often as you wanted too.
well, I won't. That's the thing. I have to. And so with teaching my 14-year-old, like, how to watch and not watch movies, part of that is to watch films that are intentionally making a statement that's meant to be uninterrupted,
Right.
paid attention to.
In a theater.
Yeah. So what did he just watch that he wants to watch Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat. This is like a 14-year-old kid, but we watched the Peter Jackson World War I film. And he
What
was
is that?
totally absorbed. It was like they took the archival footage
Yeah,
and
colorized
it,
Yeah.
and then did that trick he did in the Beatles film. He actually like came up with what they would be saying. So they're like, I have a MOS shot of someone reading a letter in the field, and they put voice to it, and you're like, he made a movie.
Amazing. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that kids are really open. That's when I started loving cinema, when I was 14. And I think that's when they really will watch anything and be really into it and will sit there for 5 hours watching a 5 hour long movie. So now's the chance to like convert them to film and everything and celluloid. And because I feel like there's a new generation of filmmakers right now that's really into doing things the right way. And I'm excited about it.
Well, that's the other thing you say, like they made this movie that sort of harkens back to these bigger cinematic movie going experiences, and look what's happening.
I know.
There's a place for that. I think there always will be a place for that. And
it's interesting because Tarantino, I don't know if it's a recent thing, but was talking about how dead cinema now is, and he's now getting into theater, and I'm thinking, I mean,
that's because he's almost at his 10.
It's playing at his cinema, so he must know about it.
Yeah, right. And I think 5 of the nominated films were shot on film for real. It's pretty great.
Well, I think it's.
I mean, I'm not saying they're all. Anyway, I think it's great.
Long may it rain, as far as we're concerned.
Right.
I know. No, I think it's terrific, and I hope you guys all get together. It seems like, you were saying it's going to make it easier for the next one, and
that's what's great.
Hopefully, you all are planning. Are you planning another film already at this stage and collaborating?
Yeah.
Anything? No, nothing to reveal about that. You can't talk.
No.
That's fine. But let me thank you first for a really, really pleasant conversation. I love getting insight into the work that you do. I wanted to talk more about your backgrounds and things, and maybe we can do a part 2 if that. How about this? When you win, which I'm sure you will, I've just jinxed it.
I've done it now.
We can come and talk about.
Now you really can never cut your hair, okay? So.
Oh, geez. All right. Well, certainly we'll see. It's this Sunday. So if they lose, snip, and actually I have to get a crew cut.
No, now you have to wait till the Oscars.
Okay. Anything for me to I mean, you don't know me, but this is abnormal. I'm just glad that I have enough.
You have a lot of hair. I think you should take advantage of it and grow it. Yeah.
No, dashing.
There's going to be a day when, maybe not. Maybe you're lucky and you're always going to have that hair. So
I hope I have at least a little, I want the suggestion of hair. How's that?
I don't think you should wear a hat. I mean, what does your wife think? Do you have a wife?
She hates, first of all, I only did this as an emergency measure. I normally don't wear one, but because my hair is 3 times
the
longer.
hat makes you look bald, because men wear hats
because they're hiding
they don't have hair. Yeah.
Wow.
Like my husband. Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like I make him wear a hat. So
to hide it.
You have a great head of hair. You should show it.
I know, but I look like a parakeet with it all slicked back like that. I'm
not going to say anything. It's not my business. It's her business. But not your business. But
well, I think if we're talking about votes, you've got 2 votes to keep your hair. So there you
go. Okay, I appreciate that. You got my vote for the Academy Award for cinematography and production design.
Great. So we're all set.
Oh my goodness.
So we're all set. I think your vote to my hair means a little bit more, I think, in the scheme of things, but I'll take what I can get. Thank you guys so much for your time. I know we sort of spiraled out of control at the end,
Yes.
but really, what a pleasure
That's
to
what
meet both
editing's
of you.
for.
Okay.